Good morning, everyone. I welcome each one of you in today's webinar, which is on the topic step by step getting started with Angular 4. Agenda for today's webinar is that we will talk a little bit about Angular CLI. Then we will move to modules, look into components, data bindings, components communication, services, and dependency injections. It is going to be an 1 hour webinar, and a little bit will rush up on some of the points. But we are going to bring you this webinar now on each month. So keep joining in all these webinars, and I'm sure you should able to learn all Angular topics and also other topics like MVC, React, and all, which webinar will be bringing you in. I'm host for today's webinar. My name is Dhananjay Kumar. I am a 8-time Microsoft MVP. I work as developer evangelist for Infragistics. You can send me any email at dkumar@infragistics.com, whether it's a technical queries you have, whether you have some technical queries, or anything related to this webinar. You can send me across. If you are on Twitter, feel free to tweet me at debug_mode. So many people are asking me that who is hosting this webinar. So as I told you, I work as developer evangelist for Infragistics, and this webinar is brought to you by Infragistics. Infragistics, we have products for almost all of your need. That if you are creating a web application, whether it's using Angular or React or ASP.NET MVC, you can use our award-winning jQuery based product called Ignite UI. If you are working with WPF, you can use our products for that. If you're working on Xamarin, so mainly Infragistics products helps you to write your application faster, and our controls are so much awesome that they helps to run your application faster as well. All of our products have a 30 days free trial, which you can go to infragistics.com and download and explore. So before I go, I'll just want to give you some like browse you through Infragistics website. So if you go to infragistics.com, you'll land on this page, and you see that we have almost products for, like, if you're a developer, we have product Ignite UI, which is a jQuery based library, and of course it's a JavaScript based library for that matter, and it can be used with Angular, React, ASP.NET MVC, and everywhere. Then we have Xamarin products. If you are creating mobile apps using Xamarin, please go ahead and check our Xamarin product. We have just launched many new features like App Map and Xamarin Configurator, etc., which you may want to check. If you are creating Windows Form, WPF, ASP.NET, or Universal Windows applications, you see that there are tools, controls for everything. If you're a designer, feel free to go and check our designer tool called Indigo Studio. Indigo Studio is a prototyping tool, and please go and you can go and explore Indigo Studio. The same way, if you are a business manager and all, you can go and check Save Plus and Report Plus, etc. So feel free to explore infragistics.com, and as you see that you have sample apps, you have everything here which you can download, use it as a reference, and all. Before we go to this webinar, a few important points I would like to draw your attention to. That if you are using, if you do use Twitter, feel free to send your good or bad feedback about webinar using the hashtag Infragistics, or you may want to tag Infragistics Twitter handle, which is Infragistics. Recording of this webinar will be available on Infragistics blog later, maybe next week. All of our products have a 30 days free trial, which you can download and use it. Since this is Angular webinar, Infragistics provides you a free Angular Essential ebook. You can go to that particular URL which is on your screen. Feel free to take a note of that URL, bit.ly.com/Angular ESS. This is a bit.ly URL. When you click on this, you will be navigated to a page where you just need to provide your name and email address, and you can download a free Angular Essential book, which has around 60 chapters. I learned Angular from that book, so I'm sure that that book would be very beneficial to you too. So here I'll give you 5 seconds to make a note of these two important URLs. One is infragistics.com/product/ultimate download, or you can just keep a note of infragistics.com. And for that book download, feel free to go to bit.ly.com/Angular ESS. As we talked about Ignite UI, Ignite UI is Infragistics product, and it is a JavaScript library which can be used in your HTML5 application, Angular, React, or ASP.NET MVC application. Ignite UI helps you to write your application faster. So for example, if you have a requirement for a high performance grid which can work with millions of records and can have vertical virtualization and horizontal virtualization, besides all these usual features like filtering, sorting, pagination, and etc., you may have to write a lot of code for that. But if you use Ignite UI for JavaScript grid control in your MVC or Angular applications or a React application, it is just a matter of a few property setting and your grid is up and running in your application. So this helps you to write your application faster, and since all these grids all these controls are very much optimized for better performance, it helps you to run your application faster. Ignite UI is built for modern web. When I say built for modern web, means it works seamlessly with Bootstrap 4. It works with all these npm, yarn, webpack, and everything. So feel free to go to infragistics.com/product/ignite UI. You can check Ignite UI, and one good news is that some of Ignite UI controls are open source, so you can go and check which controls are open source. You may want to use that. You may want to add features and all to that as well. So this is something very interesting. I request you to have a look of this if you have not used it before. Well, so let us come back to Angular. Like today webinar is step by step building your first Angular application. But before we move ahead, why Angular? So I have taken these points from Angular.io, that Angular is one framework to create mobile application as well as desktop application. So if you want to create a native mobile app, you can use Angular. If you want to create a native desktop app, you can use Angular. And of course, if you want to create a progressive web app or single page application or mobile web, you can use Angular. Since Angular has many features like server-side rendering, it works with web workers, etc. Performance and speed of Angular is very good. It has support of incredible tooling like templates, CLI, and you can work with Angular in different IDE. So Angular helps you to develop across all platforms. Angular has many building blocks, but most important building blocks are like when you go and create Angular application, you need to work with these building blocks of Angular, which is in front of you. So you'll be creating modules, you would be creating components, services, pipe, directives, and you'll be doing data bindings and everything. Out of all these 6, today we are going to look into components and bindings in detail. What makes Angular awesome? Why we should care about Angular? There are many JS libraries or framework out there in the market, but why Angular? So these 6 are my favorite feature of Angular, and I feel that these 6 features make Angular really awesome. And these are AOT, like ahead of time compilation. So you can pre-compile the entire Angular application before it gets downloaded in client browser. There is provision for server-side rendering. There is tree shaking. Everything is component based, so each little control should be component in Angular. It has support for RxJS and observable. It has support for mutable.js as well, which helps you to work with a really large set of data. And of course, Angular supports dynamic loading, and with NGRX it supports lazy loading as well. So these are some of really uh, powerful feature of Angular, and that makes Angular a very powerful framework to write applications, whether for desktop or for web. You can learn more about all these features over on Angular.io and on different blogs. Uh, Now let us go and write some code. Let us see that how we can start with Angular. I see there are many questions regarding version of Angular. Keep in mind that Angular JS, we use the term Angular JS for Angular version 1. Like if you are working with Angular JS, Angular version 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, we call that Angular JS. If you are using and working with Angular version 2 or 4, we don't give them any version name. It's only Angular. Uh, Angular 4 is having more features than Angular 2, but they are almost same. Angular, which is 2 or 4, is based on ECMAScript 6 or ECMA 2015. So it has support for all these new features of JavaScript like class, modules, etc. Block level scoping, etc. However, Angular JS 1 was based on ECMA 5, so it did not have support of all these ECMA 6 features. So keep in mind that Angular 2 and Angular 4 is almost same. It's just few features has been added in Angular 4. Just I guess a day back or two, Angular version 4.3 got launched, which has support for better animation and lazy loading, etc. So really now you should not worry about what version of Angular you are working on. Just call it Angular. And if you use Angular CLI, it will always download latest version of Angular and you will work with that. Since Angular is based on, in Angular you use TypeScript, Webpack, and Jasmine and Karma, etc. for unit testing. So there are a lot of configuration needed to set up an Angular project, which can be a little bit complex and tedious sometimes. So what Angular team has done, they have given us a really cool Angular CLI. Angular CLI is set of commands which you can use to create an Angular application, to run unit test of Angular application, to create the production bit of your Angular application, or or run your Angular application on the development server, etc. So I use Angular CLI. It is really good, and in this webinar also we are going to use Angular CLI to create our application and run that. So as you see on your screen, that to work with Angular CLI, what all you need to do, first you need to install Node.js. So step one, you should have Node.js installed on your machine. Once Node.js is installed, then you can install Angular CLI globally on your development machine by using command npm install and then -g and then Angular CLI. Once Angular CLI is installed, you can create a new Angular app using ng new and give name of the app whatever you want. Once that is done, then change directly to that particular app, which whatever name you have given, and to run on a local development server, just use ng-serve. So these are the three commands you need at minimum to create an Angular project and run it on local development server using Angular CLI. So what I have done here, So what I have done here, before we go to a component, let me show you that I have already created a project using Angular CLI. So here you see that on your screen that you have a project created using Angular CLI. And to create this project, I have followed the same steps. What I have done, I have used Angular engine new to create this particular project. So let me go here and show you that what I'm doing on the command prompt. What I have done, if you can see my command prompt, I ran this command ng new demo app. Since already Angular CLI is installed on my machine, so it has created a I did not have to run that command, Angular CLI installation command again. To create new app, I am using ng new demo app. Once that is done, I change directly to demo app, cd demo app, and once that is done, I can run that default application which got created using ng serve. What this particular command has done, ng new command has done, it has created a project for me, which you see on your screen. That project has many files. Out of that, most important folder is this app folder. In the app folder, you can see that you have app.module.ts, app.component.ts, app.component.html, and app.component.spec.ts. So it follows the standard design guideline for Angular is that if you are creating a module, you should give the extension .module.ts in the file. If you are creating a component, you should give the file name as .component.ts. So let us say if you want to create a product component, then your file name should be product.component.ts. If you want to create a product module, then your file name should be product.module.ts. So here you have a app.module.ts and app.component.ts. App.component.spec.ts is a unit test file. This particular file contains a unit test for app.component.ts. So let us start here from index.html. On the index.html, you can you see that you have something called app root. So we have created this app root. And to check that, go to first main.ts. In the main.ts, you can check here, you can see here that what we are doing, we are bootstrapping a module called app module in line number 11, and that app module we are importing here. Let's go to app module. So this app module.ts, and again, if you check this app.module.ts, and let me show you the main.ts again. If you check this main.ts, in the main.ts line number 4, we are saying that, hey, import app module from a file called app.module, which is in the folder app. So in the folder app here, you see that I have something called app.module.ts file. So that's why I'm importing. Now let's go and open that app.module.ts file. In app.module.ts file, you see that I have created a class and exporting that, and then converting that class as a module using ng module decorator. That ng module decorator, what it does, it takes an object as a parameter, and that object has many properties like declarations, imports, provider, and bootstrap. So here, what we are doing to create a module, your application can have any number of module, but it must have one main module. And right now in our application, there is only one module, so that module is main module, and we are bootstrapping that module on main.ts. Now, in this module, what we are doing, we are importing something called app component, and also we are importing some core modules of Angular. So here, whatever component you are working with, component or filters, what you need to do, you need to pass that component in the declaration array property of ng module. So here in line number 8, I am passing that app component which we are creating inside a declaration array. Then whatever module you are working on, so we are working with browser module, you need to pass that as a parameter of imports array. So line number 11, we are passing that browser module. Providers, I'll come back to you later. And then bootstrap. Your application can have any number of component. Uh, Whatever component you pass as a parameter in bootstrap becomes the main component of your application. So right now we have only one component called app component, which is written inside a file called app.component, and we are bootstrapping that component here, app component. Now let us go and check app.component.ts file. So app.component.ts file, if you open this file, this is the component of your application, the only one component which we have created. This has, to create a component, you need to first create a class and then decorate that with a component decorator. So we created a class called app component. So keep in mind that if your file name is app.component.ts, then design a guideline says that your class name should be app component, where A capital and C capital. And in this class, I'm creating a new property called title and assigning some value called app. That's fine. Now this component decorator takes many properties in the object. One is selector. So using this selector value, you will be using this app component on other HTML and templates. Then the template URL. Template URL means where we have template for this particular component. And then style URLs, like if component has its own style, we can pass that as a parameter in style URL. So now backward, what we have done, we have created a component called app component. App component template is in app.component.html. So let's open that app.component.html, which has right now only one h1 called hello world. Okay. Once we have created this component, we are importing that in module. And since right now we have only one component, so we are bootstrapping that component here in line number 14. So we imported it and bootstrapping it. And then we have a module here called app module. Application has only one module called app module. So we are bootstrapping that in main.ts, which you just saw that we are doing that in main.ts here, bootstrap module called app module. And since now this module has only one component, app component, and selector for app component is selector for app component is, let us open it, is app root. So on the index.html, we are using that app root in line number 12. And this application will render whatever is inside the app root. Let's go and save it. And to run this, what you need to do, you need to run the command ng-serve, which you see on the screen. So just run the command ng-serve, and it will compile all the modules and run your application. Keep in mind that when you are using Angular CLI, it uses Webpack module loader, and everything is configured, so you really don't have to do anything, and you focus on writing your application. So as you see now, this says that Webpack compiles successfully and your application is running on port 4200. Let's go ahead and open the port 4200, and here you see that we have this hello world displayed. Now when you go back to your code again, and let us try to change this hello world to something called hello world hello Infragistics, and save it and check your output again. You see that has been changed to hello Infragistics. So let us see that what is components. Let us see that what is components, and then we come back and create more components and everything. So you see that we have right now one component in our application called app components. So components are the most important building blocks of an Angular application. An Angular application is a tree of Angular components. So your application will have many components. If you are doing routing, you are actually navigating from one component to another component. You are using one component inside another component and everything. So most of the time you are writing components in Angular. Angular components are subset of directives. There are three kind of directives in Angular. Component is one of the directives. Always keep in mind that components must have a template. So you cannot have a component without a view. Each component has a class and a template attached to that. So in Angular, you have three types of directives: components, attribute directive, and structure directive. And component is one of that directive. We'll create more components in the webinar. But before we go and create more components, let me introduce you Angular bindings. In Angular, you have actually three types of bindings. They are called interpolation, event binding, property binding, and two-way data binding. Binding means how your HTML element from the template, from the view, is talking to the properties of a class, to your data. So first type of binding is interpolation. Interpolation means you have a data in your component class and you want to display that on the component. You will use interpolation. In interpolation, you use double curly bracket. Then there is something called event binding. So if you are using, let us say, a button on your template, and on click event of that button, you want to call a function in component class. In that case, you will use event binding. And the syntax for event binding is a small bracket. Then there is something called property binding. If you want to set property of a particular HTML element with the property of component class, then you will use property binding. For example, if you have an image and you want to set height of that image with a numeric properties of your component class, you will use property binding. And last is two-way binding. Keep in mind, two-way binding is not a type of binding. There are three types of binding only: interpolation, event binding, and property binding. Two-way data binding in Angular is combination of event binding plus property binding. So the syntax, what you see, is actually combination of event plus property, and it is called banana in the box syntax. Let us go ahead and see all this binding demo one by one. I see many people are complaining about the voice. Is it clear now? Guys, voice is clear now? Please let me know. Okay. So what I'm saying, that let us go and see all these types of binding demo one by one. Okay. And it's super simple. So here we have this component. We are going to put this in the component. The component name is app component. And right now you see that component has a property called title. And in this, we are saying that hello, let us say, Ignite UI with Angular. We have a property called title. Value of that property is set to hello Ignite UI with Angular. And now we want to display this title on the template of the component. How we will do that? To do that, we will use something called interpolation. So I'm getting rid of this hello Infragistics, which was the hard-coded value. Okay. And use interpolation. To use interpolation, you need to use double curly braces, and inside this use the property name. So property name is title. Take this and use this inside that double curly braces. This is called interpolation. Now Save this and check your output again. And here we are. We have Hello Ignite UI with Angular. So this was one example of interpolation. What you do in interpolation? You just display a component property on the template. Our component class property is title, and we are displaying that on template using interpolation here. So this is called interpolation. Next, let us say demo of event binding. For event binding, what I'm doing, that I'm going to add a function in our component class, and let us say this function is say hello, like it's a normal TypeScript function, and inside this function we are using alert to display this title property. Keep in mind that in your component class, you should not use alert. You should not use anything which is related to like this UI and all. But just to give you this demo, I am using alert this dot title. Now what we want to call this function on a click of a button. So we have a button on the HTML right here. Okay, and we will call that function on click of that button. So what I am doing, I have a button here called button class. I'm setting some bootstrap class for the button, and then I'm using event binding here. That click is a event binding. Event binding is inside a small bracket, and we want to work with click event, so that's why we are passing click here. And then on click event we want to call a function say hello, and we are passing that say hello function here, and we already created say hello function here, as you see, alert this dot title. Again, save this and check the output. Now we have a button here, click me. When we click on that button, you see that we are getting an alert message called hello ignite UI with Angular. So here, in this way, you can bind event of HTML element with a function on your component class. Let us go to the third demo, which is called property binding. In property binding, what you do, you bind property of HTML element with property of component class. So what I'm doing here in app.component.html, I'm adding an image. You see, this is a normal image element, and setting source to some Ignite you Infragistics logo. Now if we go and run this application, you see that we should have a Infragistics logo here. Now that if we have to set height and width of this logo, how we'll do that? Of course, we can go into CSS and create a style and set height and width of this particular image. But if you do that, then that is going to be static height and width. Like while developing your application, you have to decide what should be height and width of this image. But assume that this is dynamic in nature. You want to set height and width of this on basis of some data which is coming from the database. Then in that case, you will be using property binding. To use property binding and to show you how property binding works, what I'm doing here, I have created two properties in the component class called height and width, setting height to 70 and width to 50. Now I want to set height and width of that image to this height and width. And how I can do that? I can do that right here in the image. I'll say that to property binding is inside a square bracket, and I'll say style dot height dot px equal to set it to the height property of my class. And the same way we'll say style dot width dot px equal to width property of the class. So here you have style.height.px height, style.width.px width. Now save this, and if you check output again, you see height and width of that image has been set to the properties of component class. The fourth type of binding is called two-way data binding, and two-way data binding is actually combination of event binding and property binding. Let us see that how that works. To work with two-way data binding, what I am doing in two-way data binding, you need to pass information from component class to template and also from template to component class. So it's a two-way. To demonstrate that, what I'm doing here, in the component.ts class, I'm creating few properties, num1, num2, and result, and then a function called add. This function is adding num1 and num2 and saving that result to this.result. Now what we need to do, we need to bind this num1 with our input box 1, bind this number with input box 2, and then call this add function on a click of a button and all. So how we will work with this? For that, let us go and create a UI to the template. And for that, what I'm doing here, I'm adding a div class row, which has one input type number, placeholder enter number 1, input type number, placeholder enter number 2, then button, add, and on click of this button, we need to set the result. Now, how we can create two-way data binding? For that, we'll use ng model directive, and that is used like this. It is banana in the box syntax. So square bracket and then small bracket. Square bracket denotes property binding. Small bracket denotes event binding. And then we'll say ng model equal to, and we want this input element data to be set and assigned to num1 property. So we'll put it here, num1. Then we'll take this, and we want this input element data should be assigned to num2. So we'll set num2. Then on click of this button, we want to call add, and you have already seen that. We'll use event binding, click equal to, we want to call add function. And we have created add function here, and here we want to display result equal to result. So just we have to display, so we'll use interpolation. So what I have done here, I am using ng model to create two-way data binding, ng model num1, ng model num2, click add, result, save all. So here you see that line number 9 is two-way data binding, line number 10 is two-way data binding, line number 11 is event binding, and line number 12 is interpolation. So say file, save all, and go back to application, and it is giving you error because ng model is part of a module called ng forms. So forms module. So we need to first add that module. And to add that module, what you got to do, go to app.module.ts and say that, hey, import forms module from Angular forms. So that ng model is part of forms module. So you got to first import it. In line number 3, I'm importing it, and since it is a module, I need to pass it as a parameter to imports array, as a value in imports array. So here I am saying that, hey, browser module and forms module, we are importing it and we are passing in the imports for this particular app module. Save all and go back to application again. And here you see that we have two input box and a button. So enter some value 3 and 4. So this is input box 1. This 3 is getting assigned to num1 due to two-way data binding. This 4 is getting assigned to num2 due to the two-way data binding. When we click on add, we invoke event binding, and click of this, we are calling add function, which is calculating value of result, and using interpolation, we are displaying that result 7 here. So this is how your binding works in Angular. Um, Okay, so next what I'm going to do, we are going to see that how we can create a new component. Right now we are doing everything inside the app component. What if we want to create our own component, and how we'll do that? And in that we'll learn about component communication as well. So to create a new component, let us say if you want to create a component called app child component, so say new file app child dot component dot ts. So here I am going to create a new component called app child. So my file name is appchild.component.ts. Okay, once that is done, first I need to create a class called app child component, and we need to export this class because we want to use this outside this particular file. Now to make this class as a component, what we need to do, we need to decorate this with component decorator. And to use component decorator, what you need to do, you need to import that from Angular core library. So component is part of Angular core. So first we imported it in line number 1. Then we are using it as a decorator in line number 3 over the class app child component. Now this decorator has many parameters which you can explore, but important which you must set is called selector. Using selector, you will use this app child component on other template, on other HTML. So we'll say hey, selector is app child. Then each component should have a template. So if your template is in a separate HTML file, you can use template URL. If you have inline template, you can use template. So here I am saying that hey, template, and we will say that hey, okay, h2, and we'll display something here in that template later. Now app child component has a property, for example, called message. Type of that property is string, and value is I am child, and we want to display this, so we'll use interpolation here and display it here. Okay, so this is our new component called app child component. We created this. Keep in mind that to create a class, export it, import the component, and set some basic properties of component decorator called selector and template. Once this is done, to use it, what we need to do, first we need to pass it in the module. So go to app.module.ts and say that hey, import app child component from file app child.component. So here is your first, you are importing app child component, and once you imported it, you need to declare it, you need to pass it in the declaration array. Now app child component can be used inside this app module, anywhere inside this app module. Now we want to use this on app component. So go to app.component.html. What I'm going to do, whatever was there, I'm just commenting that. Okay, and we are going to use that app child component. To use that app child component, selector is app child. So select that app child, and you use it like a normal element. So here you have app child. Inside app component, we are using this. Go to app.component.ts and what I'm going to do, I'm going to just comment everything which is here. So right now app component has just one title, but inside app component we are using app child, and we created that app child component here, which has a message string, Angular code, and an app.module.ts, import it and pass it as a parameter to declaration array. Let's explore the output now. So here you see that I'm getting that I am child, and if you notice, this I am child is coming from the child component. So right now you are using app child component inside app component. Now if we have to pass this, right now what's happening, that this app child component had its own data. What if we want to pass this data from the parent component? We want to pass this app I am child value from app component. How we'll do that? And for that we will use something called input decorator. So let us go here and say that, hey, component input from Angular core, okay, and just delete this value I am child, okay, and decorate this with input. So input matches. Now whenever you say decorate a variable or anything property with input decorator, it means in Angular you are instructing that value of this message property will be set, will be passed from outside this particular app child component. So we have done here. Now to pass the data, go to app.component.html. And since that is a property, use property binding, and property binding means use a square bracket, Control V, and now here you can pass it whatever property you want to. So in our app.component.ts, we have a property called title. Let us say we want to pass that. So we'll be passing that here. Now our output should be hello ignite UI with Angular. Save all, and if you go and check, you see that we are getting hello ignite UI with Angular. So using input decorator, you can pass data from a parent component to a child component. Now let us see that how we can pass data from a child, how we can emit an event from child component to the parent component. So to do that, what I'm going to do, in the child component class, I'm going to add a button. So here on the child component, let us go and say that, hey, I have a button here. Button is a very simple button called, and that on the click of that button, we are calling a function called handle click. Okay, so here we have that function handle click, which is saying that, hey, handle click, not handle click means handle click. Okay, so we are calling this function handle click on click of this button, and instead of console.log, I am going to display that in alert. So here, hey, child clicked. I'm saying that, hey, child clicked or something like that. Now, of course, this is very simple, and we will have one button here. So when we click on that, we are getting, hey, child clicked. Now, what if right now on click of this button, which is on the child component, we are calling a function of the child component. What if this handle click function is on the parent component right here? Then how we will call that? To do that, you need to use something called output decorator and event emitter. Here we'll say that output and event emitter. So import those things, and then we have to create a new event, and we'll create that event like this. So what we are saying that, hey, create an event called event click. This name could be anything. I'm just giving event click, which, and type of that is event emitter. So that is object of event emitter. And since this event click is decorated with output, means we are going to emit it to outside this particular child component class. And in this function, what we are saying, instead of alerting that, we are saying that, hey, this dot event click dot emit, and you can emit data or you can do anything. We are saying that, hey, this dot message, so just pass what coming from the parent component and sending it back. You can do that, or you can pass some hard-coded value and everything. So right now, on click of this button, what would happen, that instead of doing anything, we are emitting an event, and that will go to the parent component. Now let us see that how we can handle that at the parent. So in the parent component class, since that is a property, sorry, that is an event, what we'll do, we will use event binding. So our event name is event click, event binding is small bracket, and then we are saying that, hey, parent function. So let us go and create that parent function. That parent function should be part of app component class. Go to app.component.ts, and here we'll say that we have a function called parent function. That parent function takes the data, and here we are saying that, hey, console.log alert. So what we are doing, on the click of a button which is on the child component, we are calling the function of parent component. File, save all, and here we have this click me. Wow. So there's something we are missing here. Parent function, Control C, and then here it is parent function. I guess some spelling mistake. And right now it should work. If it does not work, then it is the way to do it. Okay, so here it is foo. You are getting that, and in this way you can call you can emit event from child component to parent component. There are other ways to do component communication as well. In Angular, you can do component communications using input, using output. We just seen input and output. Then others are services, view child, component child, using temporary reference variable, etc. So keep visiting Infragistics blog, and we will write about these things on the blog. And also, if you download that Angular Essential ebook, all these topics are covered in that. Next, let us see that how we can bring data from the server and display it in Angular. So what I'm going to show you, that I have already created an API, and my API is running right here. So here is my API, which is returning a JSON data of the task. So you see that I have an API which is returning JSON data, which has ID, status, and title. What next we are going to learn, because we are running out of time, so quickly we'll learn that how we can bring data from a REST API to an Angular application. Okay, so to do that, first what we need to do, first we got to create entity class which will represent this particular items like to do task. And to do that, let us go to our application and say that app new file, and create a new file called task.ts. In task.ts, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create an entity class called task, and in the constructor of that we are saying that there are three properties: ID, title, and status. I have created it exactly the same. My API is getting returned here: ID, status, and title. So whatever data would come, we are going to get that data inside an array or observable of this particular task class. So once that is done, let us go and create a service. So what is service in Angular? A service in Angular are kind of a reusable, you can say it's a reusable entity. Whatever in one Angular application, on depending on how you are injecting it, there would be only one object of service. So it depends on how you are. If you are passing that provider only once in a module, then for the whole module there would be only one object of that particular service. So any requirement like making a call to outside REST API, or logging, or doing user authentication, authorization, or sharing some information between components, etc. For those purpose, you are creating service. You create services in Angular. To create a service, what I'm going to do, I'm going to say that, hey, create a service called data.service.ts. Since it is a service, so I'm following the standard and using the name .service.ts. In data.service.ts, again, to create a service, again you have to do the same thing. Say, hey, export class and data service. So here is my data service, and since this is a normal class, I want to make it as an Angular service. For that, what I will do, I will use something called injectable from Angular core, and then use this decorator. So if you use an injectable decorator on top of a class, that class is now injectable. Angular follows dependency injection and using various ways, like will create token for this and all that, and will inject it in your module whenever you will pass it as the value of provider, which I'll show you later. Now in this, we want to make a call to the outside API. So let us first go and set API URL. Keep in mind, right now I'm hard coding this API URL, but there are various ways you can configure and pass it dynamically to the constructor of your service as well. So this is my API URL. Here I'm doing a very simplest approach to bring data to our application. So here we are saying import injectable. Now to work with REST API, Angular has given you something called HTTP and HTTP services, which are used to make call to a REST API, and they returns observable and promises. And Angular works with RxJS and observable, etc., which we can cover in further webinars or further blog posts. Keep visiting our Infragistics/community/blogs. So here I'll go a little bit faster and see that how we can bring data. So what type of data we want to bring, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to import a couple of more things. So what I'm saying that I import task from task, because task is the entity we are working on. After that, we are saying that I import HTTP headers, request options, response from Angular HTTP. We need these to make a call to REST API. Then import RxJS and import observable. Once that is all the required modules and libraries are imported, let us go and create the constructor for this particular class. Now, how you inject a dependency in Angular is very simple. When I say inject dependency in Angular, means to work in this particular class, I need object of HTTP. Now I have a choice. I can come here inside this and say, let us say var h equal to new HTTP or whatever. But in that case, I'm creating object my own, and if something is going wrong in that, then this data service class will also not get instantiated. So to fix it, Angular by default gives us dependency injection. What all you need to do, you just say that, hey, for this particular, when you write this syntax, private, for this particular data service class, inject a dependency of type HTTP. So whenever constructor will be invoked, Angular will create an object of HTTP and assign that reference to a private local variable called underscore HTTP. So this is how you do the inject a dependency, one way of injecting dependency in Angular. So once that is done, now we need to bring data from the API. And for that, what I'm doing, I'm creating a function called get tasks, and this function will return a observable of type task array. So this function is returning a get task is returning a type observable of task array. Okay, and here let us make a call to the API. To make a call to the API, what we'll say that, hey, return this dot HTTP, and using HTTP make a get call, HTTP get operation to the this particular URL which is inside API URL. Once it is made, like HTTP get request is made, map the return data to a function dot extract data, which I'll show you how I created that. And dot catch, if there's a catch, there's an error, then handle error like this. Now we got to create these functions, extract data and handle data, and we are going to create that. Here, so we are saying that, hey, private extract data. So whatever data is coming, I'm saying private extract data, whatever response is coming from the server, just convert that to JSON. So it will return us the JSON, and then I'm handling the error here in a function called error.message, and then server and everything, and throwing the observable. We're not going into detail of that as of now, but just keep in mind that we are using HTTP dot get to make a HTTP get operation. If you want to perform HTTP post operation, you should be using HTTP dot post. If you want to perform put, then HTTP dot put, and then passing the URL here. Then whatever response is coming, mapping that to a JSON data, and this particular service, whenever we will use it, we'll make a call to that particular localhost API to do task and bring data for us. Now let us see that how we can use this service. We have created a service, but how we can use this. To use this service, very first, go to first app.model.ts, and in app.model.ts, first we got to import that. So we'll say import data service from data.service. So once that is imported, since it is a service, you need to pass that in the providers. So whenever you create a service, you need to pass that in providers. Again, providers, there are different ways to pass value in providers. You can use properties like use class and all. But if you pass directly data service inside the provider, it means provider name is also data service, and the class which is used for provider is also data service. Sometimes we'll cover in detail how dependency injection works, but this is the simplest way. Import it and pass it as a value in providers array. Once this is done, we want to now bring data to the component, and for that I'm going to app.component.ts, and right now I'm commenting everything. I'm just saying that, hey, title tasks, and here we are going to bring that data. Okay, so first what we need to do, you need to import you need to import that data service. So import data service from data.service. Once that is imported, also we need to import tasks from because we need to work with this task entity also. So we imported data service, we have imported tasks, and we are going to use them to bring data to this particular component. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to use on init. So there is something called component lifecycle. Component lifecycle means there are various functions given to you from Angular which would get executed in the lifecycle of a component. So for example, there is a component lifecycle hook called on change. There is a component lifecycle hook called on init. Called on view init, called on content init, and etc. So these functions get called at the appropriate time in your component lifecycle. On init lifecycle hook gets called just after your component gets created. So we are going to bring that data inside on init, not inside constructor, because if you bring that data from the REST API inside constructor, what would happen? Your component will take time to be loaded. And also if there's some error in bringing the data, the whole component would not get instantiated, which we don't want. So we are going to bring that inside on init, a lifecycle hook. So here I have imported everything, and also we need to import something called observable. So first what we'll say that, hey, implements on init lifecycle hook, okay. And since that is an interface, so we have to call the function ng on init, and inside this function we are going to make call to the data service. Again, since data service is a service, so we need to inject that inside app component the way we injected HTTP inside constructor of data.service. So to do that, go to app.component.ts, and in the constructor of app.component.ts, we need to again do the same thing. We need to pass the type. So we say that, hey, constructor private data service and data service. So in this way, again, we are injecting data service to this app component constructor. Okay, so once that is done, let's go and create two variables. Here I am creating two variables called task and error message. In the error message, error would be assigned, and in the tasks, the task which is coming from the server would be assigned. Now in the ng on init, we will make call to the data service. So to do that, what we'll do, we'll say that this dot data service dot get tasks. Okay, and since that is returning an observable, so we need to subscribe to the observable which is returning, and in that we'll say tasks is equal to this dot we are using arrow function here, which is part of again ECMA 6, and say this dot task is equal to the task which is returned from the server. Okay, and error is, so see, error is a parameter here. So this is an arrow function, which is a body, which is a kind of way of writing a JavaScript function. So we are saying that error, so this task is a parameter, this error is a parameter, and then here we'll say this dot error. So this dot error message, which we are declaring at line number 15, is equal to error which is coming from the server, and we are typecasting that to any because type is here any. So this in ng on init, in this way you can bring data from the server. Now let us go ahead and in the app.component.html, right now I'm just commenting everything, and we'll just say h1 and h1, and here let us just using the interpolation, so title, and use the class equal to text center. Okay, and what I'm going to do in the data.service.ts, that whether we are reaching here or not, for that we'll say that console.log in service. Let us test what we have done so far. So file, save all, And also in the app.component.ts, in this dot task, after this we can say that console dot log this dot task, and see that how it is working. So here save this, and so it is saying that no provider for HTTP. So it is saying, why it is saying that no provider for HTTP, because we have not imported module for the HTTP. And to do that, just quickly let us go to app.module.ts, and here say that after form modules, import HTTP module, and because HTTP service is part of HTTP module, and then pass that as a as a value of imports array, then save all and come back again. So it is running and it is trying to bring data from the server, and you see that we have these tasks here. And if you look at the bottom here, those 16 in service is called, so we are able to make the call to the service, and 16 items are getting returned from the API. And here we have those 16 items. So here is a pending bat Kohli 788 some dummy data, and if you see the first item is pending bat Kohli 788. So we are able to bring data from the API to our Angular application. Now what is only left, that how we can display this data on the template. So let us quickly see that how we can do that, and it is very simple. Now to do that, go back to our app.component.html. Here I have commented everything, and I'll say br, and then I'll create a new row, and in this row what I'm going to use a table. We are going to display data in a table, so we'll say that table, and type of table, we are working with responsive table here. Okay, table class, table responsive. Now what we want a head of the table. So in the head we are going to put t head, task ID, task and status, and then what we want t body. So let us go and quickly put a t body here. And in this t body we should have a tr, and this number of rows should be repeated as a number of items in that array, and then we should have td. So what I'm going to do here, we'll say that tr, and then we have a directive, a structure directive called ng_for. So we'll use that. We'll say that ng_for equal to let t of tasks, and this tasks is the property which we created here in the app.component here task, and the data is getting assigned to tasks. So we are just going through, iterating through that here, and saying let t of task, and here using the interpolation we'll just display all the values now. So we'll say that t dot that is ID, status and title. So we'll say that, hey, first we want to see ID. So here is the ID. Then again t dot title and t dot status, and here just to cross check that whether we are giving the same ID, title, status. Now what I have done here in the app.component.html, that I'm iterating that number of rows using ng_for let t of task, and then using the interpolation we are displaying the data which is coming from the API. So save, and in the application let me see that why that table responsive not working. So we'll just say that, hey, give me the class table and say save all. And here you see that we are able to get data from an API in our Angular application. And here is the API which is returning, for example, go to movies. We have that go to movies right here and something like that. So these are the just random data. So in this way, you can bring data from the server and work in your Angular application. So this is very simple. Only we have to inject HTTP and use http.get to bring data, extract that to a JSON, and in your component, what all you got to do, just subscribe to that observable, and that's it. So this is what all I have for today webinar. And when you come again in the next webinar, we will go in detail about like how to work with this data, how to insert data, delete, and everything. So I request you that keep joining our webinar, keep checking our emails from Infragistics. And now I'm open to take any questions. And as you see that if you have any queries, please send that to sales-india@infragistics.com. And you can download free trial of Ignite UI, or for any of our products, go to infragistics.com and feel free to download that. A recording of this webinar will be available on our blog maybe next week, so keep checking that. You will get an email about the feedback of the webinar, so please provide your feedback and everything. And I sincerely thank each one of you for joining today's webinar. My name is Dhananjay Kumar, and thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording now, and then I'll take your question and answer, and we are going to write a follow-up blog post for the webinar. So if your question does not get answered right now, we will put that question and answer of that question in the follow-up webinar. Once again, thank you so much, everyone. Keep visiting infragistics.com and explore our products, and let us know how you find it. Thank you so much.